everybody. Welcome out here to another day on the farm, and we're going to be talking about beating the heat. Pretty warm right now here in Middle Tennessee. 2 days ago I was up to 105 degrees, and I know out west there's been at least 2,000 cows that have died from heat exhaustion, heat damage, heat stroke. There's all different types of things that the heat has a hard effect on our cows. So I'm going to talk to you about a few things that I do here at the farm to help mitigate heat and make sure our cows are as well protected as they can be. The most important part with your soil is to make sure you keep it covered, and to make sure all those bare spots that you have, anything that's out there, even think about, your grasses, how tall you're grazing or how short you're grazing. The temperature of that soil, if it's baked, it's going to harden even faster. So try to keep your soils covered. And then also the second point, reduce the impact on those soils. We're going to go over how to do that, but that's to protect the soil. Reduce the impact on it. Don't go driving your tractor across the field right now because it's dry and you think, well, it's not going to damage anything. You're going to compact the soil even more. Grass. Don't graze too short. Right now at this time of the year, it's really easy to graze short because everybody's cutting hay, and what's happening is most people are haying about 50% of their farm or more because we've had a good spring grass growth and it's time to cut hay, and diesel is expensive and fertilizer is expensive, and so we're haying as effectively as we can. And so people are putting the rest of their cows on pastures that have pretty much been eaten down to nothing at this point. So currently, after they've cut hay, they're putting their cows back into those fields where they've just cut hay. Try to hold them off, folks, as long as you can. Let that grass grow a little bit. Get those leaves out there, solar panels, as I like to call them, because they're going to be collecting energy, feeding the soil, and then also feeding those roots to be able to produce more and more grass. In the heat, we're not going to produce as much grass. So it's important to every inch, every half inch, that is so important to make sure that you don't stunt the growth of your grass by grazing it too short. I recommend that you get a grazing ruler or some type of measuring device and try to keep those grasses 4 inches plus. But you're going to have to manage your farm. It's going to take some effort on your part. Don't stop moving your cows. It's easy to give up on the plan whenever the grass stops growing. But the worst thing you can do is to give up on your grazing plan. Rain's going to come. It's going to happen. And when it does, you want to make sure that your grasses are prepared to accept that water. You don't want them to be non-existent because then you're just going to end up with a big mud pit, and it's going to also scorch the grasses. If rain and then hot sun comes back out, it could scorch what little grass, those tender small grasses that you have, that you really need to keep on your farm. So try to do that with your grasses. Now cows, what I've been doing, and I'm not a professional, I'm not perfect, go slow with your daily moves. My cows are so, I call it lazy, but they're really being cautious about how fast they're moving. They're staying separated from each other a good bit right now. I do have I do try to take my time moving them, and that also helps reduce impact on the ground. If you just take your time, it'll take a little bit longer, but let them mosey their way across. They'll be all right. Make sure you have shade for your cows. I've even created alleys to where, my fences are pretty close to the wood lines in certain areas. So I'm trying to make sure that whenever I have a section that doesn't have a lot of shade, I've got to create an alley to some form of shade. I don't have cows that are completely heat resistant or heat more tolerant, but I gotta make sure I have that supply of shade. Make sure you've got your animals on a good mineral. There are heat recommended minerals out there. I'm sticking with the high mag. I'm starting to get some good beetle growth and populations increasing, which I hope will compete for the resources with the flies. I've got flies. Everybody's got flies, but man, it's. I also have cowbirds this year, which I may do a video on. But yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on with that. But still got flies, and right now when it's hot, it's hard to get away from them. But make sure that you use the best mineral that you can. All right, make sure you have a good water source. It's very important, and make sure it's a fresh water source. If you can change out their water, try to do it as much as you can, but try to keep fresh water going and adequate amounts of it. Have an automatic waterer on your water trough if you can. Otherwise, you need to be checking them and making sure that they have plenty of water. All right, the business side of it. We've got to manage our inventory. The number one is grass inventory. So you need to be measuring your grass and seeing what your regrowth rate is. You need to know how much grass you have for the next so many days. Right now I have 45 days worth of grass standing in my field. And I know they can eat on that and they'll still keep weight and they'll still be able to produce their calf and they'll be okay. But I need to know how much that number is. That way, step two, I can build a drought plan. And drought plan basically is me going, okay, step one, step two, step three. And this is my example here. Step one is I sell the cull cows that I know are not doing as good as they should. Step one. Step two, I sell the steers that I plan on selling for grass-fed beef. But we're not focused on like trying to buy hay and trying to make it to where we can do that. We're not going to be crazy here. If we get to a point where we're out, when we're 20 days until we're completely out of forage, and that's time that we start thinking about it here a little bit. We're not close to that. It's going to rain before that ever hits. But I do have a plan. That's step two. Step three, we sell that whole thing. Or we just sell the most of the cows that are bred, but ones that I'm not needing to further my true vision for the herd. So sometimes, guys, it's not a bad thing to sell cows. I know that we're attached to our cows. We don't need to name our cows, obviously, but we need to have a plan because we're not doing this for free. We need to make sure that we have the steps in place to make sure that the business can be profitable. Okay, fourth and not least, make sure you take care of yourself, because without you, the farm doesn't run. It's just a range of some form, but you need to make sure you take care of yourself. I recommend a wide brim hat. I like wearing a hat in the morning. Also, working early in the morning is a good thing. I like getting here at 5 o'clock in the morning because it's the coolest part of the day. Also, making sure you drink enough water, use sunscreen, take care of yourself. And guys, that's just a few tips to be able to help you with the heat. And how are you going to beat it? You can't. You need to adapt to it. And you need to be able to be flexible with it. One way that I'm being flexible with the heat is by changing my herd. And I've talked about South Pole cattle before, but South Pole cattle is made to be able to handle the hotter temperatures. They're made of a composite breed: Angus, Hereford, Barzona, and Centipole. Barzona and Centipole are both very heat tolerant breeds. So guys, just take that into thought, into retrospect. I'm really pushing toward that. That's my 5-year goal, is to be able to get closer to having a herd full of 50% South Pole and then start moving up from there. So guys, thank y'all very much for your time, and we'll see you next week.